Hi everyone, my name is Shrikant. Today we are going to learn about Apex Triggers. This is like a crash course on Apex Triggers with real-time scenarios and interview questions. By the end of this video, you will be able to understand what is trigger, when and where to use triggers. You will also understand the use cases of the triggers, and you will be able to choose before or after trigger for any given scenario. We'll also see some best practices while writing a trigger. You will understand all these things with real-time scenarios, and we'll have some quiz and interview questions too. Before going ahead, I wanted to make things clear. Is triggers difficult to learn? Of course not. So the expectation is triggers are very much ferocious like this, but in reality they are just like toys. You can really play with triggers. Once you understand the basics, you can write any complex logics by using triggers. Let's understand the definition of Apex Trigger. Apex Trigger is nothing but a block of code. So that in that block of code, you can write any of these logics. Sending of mails, creation of any other records, doing a callouts, deletion of any other records, or it can be any action here, and it can be any other action also. Whenever a record is created, whenever a record is updated, or whenever a record is deleted, or whenever a record is undeleted, if you want to do some action, if you want to write some action, just write that action or write that code in Apex Triggers, or they will be automatically called. So whenever a record is created, you want to write some action, do that in Apex Trigger. Whenever a record is updated, you want to write any of these actions or any of the complex action, write that in Apex Trigger, and that will be called automatically. Same with delete, same with undelete. In a single sentence, whenever a DML operation happens, if you want to perform any of these actions or any of the complex operations, then write that logic in Apex Triggers. Dot. Wait. All these things can be done by flows, process builders, workflows. Then why do we need to choose Apex Triggers? Okay, for people who doesn't know him, his name is Qboy, who usually interrupts the video and asks this kind of questions. Yeah, you're partially true, Mr. Qboy. However, most of them can be done by flows, process builders, and workflow. However, if things are very much complex, then only Apex Triggers can solve those scenarios. So the conclusion here is we will create a thumb rule here. So if a particular given requirement can be done by point and click tools in the sense the automation tools that are provided by Salesforce, whether it can be workflow rules or process builders, flows, validation rules, duplicate rules, etc. So if a given requirement is possible with any of these, just go for that. Okay, do it with that particular automation tool. If it is not possible, only if it is not possible, only then do it with Apex Triggers. As simple as that. So thumb rule one is point and click possibility check. So whenever a requirement comes and if you feel Apex Trigger can do it, before that check whether it is possible with point and click tools. If it is not possible, only then do it with Apex Triggers. Remember this thumb rule because we will be using that in the next coming scenarios. Trigger logic can be called in below events. So what does that mean? So you can write your logic and you can make that logic to be ran before the insert of that particular record or after the insert of a particular record or before the update of a record or after the update of a record or before the delete of a record or after the delete of that record or even like after undeletion of that record. After undelete in the sense whenever a record has been restored from recycle bin, once it is restored, if you want to perform some logic, you can write your logic in after delete events. Same with the other events. If you want to write your logic in any of these events, it will happen accordingly. This is also in entry questions. Interviewers might ask you what are the events in Trigger. You can just mention all these seven. Let's take this example. So after inserting an account by end user, automatically create a contact. So we need to write creation of contact logic in Trigger. So which trigger? It should be an insert operation. Okay, insert operation on accounts. So trigger has to be written on account on insert operation. And we need to do the action creation of contact. Okay. However, the problem here is for insert operation, we have two events. One is before insert and after insert. How you would choose before insert or after insert for a given requirement. And the second question is why Salesforce has provided two events for a single operation like this. So it is being same for update operation also, before update and after update. How you would choose it? You would know to write a logic on update operation, but what event that you need to choose before or after? Same with delete. So to understand this, we need to understand how Salesforce works whenever a record is inserted or updated or deleted. Let's see. Before going ahead, we need to understand the behind the scenes whenever a record is inserted or updated. So let's say we have a user who provides some value in the user interface and clicks on save. It will not directly go into the database. Instead, Salesforce will make Vault tool before it inserts or updates data into the Salesforce. Additionally, it will make another Vault tool after it has been inserted into the database. You don't believe me? Let me show that to you. This is the Vault tool I'm talking about. Whenever a user provides the values in the new page form and then clicks on save to insert the record, it will not directly go into the database. Instead, it will check if there is any logic written in flow. So we have automation tools in Salesforce, right? Which are flows, workflows, and process builders. And along with that, we also have Apex triggers. So first, it will check if you have written any logic or any kind of thing in flow before insert operation. If there is any logic, it will execute, else it will go to the next step, which is Apex trigger before insert. So if you have written any logic with before insert event, it will execute it accordingly. If you haven't written, even then it will go to the next step and save into the database. Once a record is being saved, let's say you provide 3 or 4 values here and then send this value, it will save into the database and it will generate the Salesforce ID, which is the 18-digit ID. Along with that, it will also generate created by ID, created date, last modified by ID, last modified date. So once that is done, it will go to the next step where it will check if you have written any logic in after insert event of the Apex triggers. Once the execution is done, it will go to the workflow. And once this execution of workflow is also done, it will go to process builder and finally checks the flow after insert event. Once this is also done, finally it comes into the database. Let's see if there is any issue or if there is any error, that complete changes will be rolled back and that particular record will not be saved into the database. That's how the order of execution works. This is the Salesforce order of execution for these events. Let's say you haven't written any logic. So whether you write your logic in these particular blocks or not, it doesn't matter. Poor Salesforce will punctually check all the blocks to see if you have written any logic and executes them. If there is no logic, it will go to the next step. So the conclusion here is you can write your logic in before insert or after insert based on the requirement. Whether it is before or after insert, what makes so much difference? My job is being done right, then why should I bother whether it to keep it before insert or after insert? Very good question. Let's see that. So as the name suggests, if before the record is inserted, what are the events or what are the things that are there? They are come under before events. In here, flow before insert will come under before event. After Apex trigger before insert will also come under before event. These things will come under after events. Okay. With this understanding, now I will teach you how to choose before insert and after insert for a given requirement. So here, for before insert, there are only two rules. Only two rules. I'm telling you again, just two rules. If you want to pre-populate any field on the same record, you need to choose before insert or before update. And if you want to throw an error after validating the record, let's say if the record is not matching with so-and-so criteria, then if you want to throw an error to the user saying that this is not valid, so in that case also you can use before events. And rest of any other scenario should go into after insert or after update events. Okay, this is applicable for insert and update events both. And do not try to pre-populate any other objects record. Let's say if an account is getting inserted, you can pre-populate any other field on the same account record, but you cannot pre-populate any other record on the same object which is an account object. Okay. Okay, let us see what are the things that we can do in after insert event or after update event. If you want, let's say an account is inserted, if you want to update any other objects records, you need to go for after insert events or after update events. If an account is inserted or updated, and if you want to do any other action, something like sending of emails, calling of external system, which is callouts or like integrations, and if you want to do something with system fields on the same record, like last modified date, record day ID, created or created by you, because these values will not be available before the record is inserted. So after that, if you want to do some operations with these fields, you can do that in after insert or after update event only. Now let's see what is this no extra DML required. So let me explain that with an example. Let's say you have a friend who is taking this package and wants to deliver it to this destination. Okay. Now your house is in between her house and the destination. So as anyhow she is taking her package and going to the destination through your home, You thought of saving your time and money there. So whenever she is going there, you just stopped her and then given your package so that she can take her package and your package and then take it into the destination. So what happened here is you saved your time and money as anyhow she's going through your house. You just given your package to her so that it is delivered to the destination. So finally, both the things are done. Both her task is done and your task is done. Let's relate this to Salesforce. So the delivery center understand that as database. So this is the database. So delivery center is the database. So the created record after user clicked on save, the created record will go to the database, right? So understand your friend as the created record by the Salesforce. Okay. Now the before, I mean your house or your home, wherever you are having your package is before insert trigger or before update trigger. Okay. The package itself is your logic. So in this case, the created record, as I have mentioned in the previous order of execution, this created record directly will not go to the database. Instead, it will check if you have written any of your logic in before insert trigger. If you have written, it will take it and then goes into the database. In this way, your time and money has been saved. In the same way, DML operation has been saved by adding your logic in before insert trigger. How DML is saved? Let's say your friend doesn't take your package and then directly goes to the database. So how your package will be delivered? Then you need to deliver your package yourself, which means it will take extra time and effort, correct? In the same way, if you don't write your logic in before insert trigger, after the record is inserted, if you want to do any logic, you need to do another update on that record and then change the values and then save it. And it will be another update again or another DML operation again, which is extra DML operation. So by saving the DML operation, you are increasing the system performance. With this scenario, we have understood that putting our logic in before insert or before update trigger will reduce any extra DML operations. So let's create another thumbnail now. So if we need to update or pre-populate any field on the same record or to fire any validation error validating that record, then we need to go for before event, which is insert or update. In any other condition, we need to jump to after event. So this is the universal way to decide how to choose before insert or before update or after insert after update. This is the biggest thumbnail which you need to remember when writing a trigger. Scenario number 1. I have a requirement where user creating an account. If user provides billing address but not shipping address, write a logic to populate shipping address with billing address. How to achieve this? So basically what Cuba is asking is, while user creating an account, he will provide values, right? So in account, we have billing address and shipping address. If user provides billing address, so all these fields are related to billing address. So if user provides billing address and doesn't provide shipping address, so billing address has to be automatically copied over to shipping address. So let me click on save. Now billing address will be there but not shipping address. So user is expecting this automation of billing address to be copied over to shipping address. So in this case, whenever user is creating an account, we need to do this logic. So obviously, whenever a record is inserted, updated or deleted, if we want to perform some action, we can go ahead with triggers. We have other options also, which are flows, process builders, etc. But in this scenario, particularly, we are working on triggers. So hence we need to write a trigger here. Now, so trigger has to be written on which object, what operation, and which event. So operation meaning insert, update, or delete. Okay. So whenever trigger has to be written, we need to mention what object is it, what operation we are doing, and what event it is. Okay. Now we need to understand what is the object. Okay. So trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. Okay. So where user is creating an account. So basically user is creating an account. Okay, so that's what his action is. So based on this action, we need to perform this logic. So what is the logic? Populating of billing address to shipping address. So this logic we will write in turn trigger. However, we need to mention the object name as account here because user is performing his action on this object. Okay, based on some action, we need to do some logic. So as per this, the object would be account. Now, so if we see we have account now, the object has been finalized as account. So what operation? So operation has to be either insert or update or delete or it can be undelete also. So in this scenario, what should be the trigger option? So we'll again take help of this thing. So where it says the action that user has performed. So if you see here, where user is creating an account. So basically user is creating an account. Basically he's inserting an account and then we need to do some action. So on insertion, which means the operation has to be insertion here. So object is account and the operation is insert. Now the thing is which event. So before event or after event. If you remember in the previous flow chart I was explaining, so we have before events and after events also, right? So which event we have to choose, before or after? So the event is before or after event can be found by our thumb rule. So we have our thumb rule discussed, right? So let us see that thumb rule now. So the thumb rule says if we need to update or pre-populate any fields on the same record or to file an error validating the record, then go with before event. In any other case, go for after events. So in our scenario, what are we doing? We are actually pre-populating shipping address based on billing address. So does that come under this scenario? Of course, yes. The reason is we are pre-populating any field. So in this scenario, we are pre-populating shipping field on the same record, because whatever account is that is getting inserted, we are updating the shipping address of the same record. So as this is the scenario here, we need to choose before event. Okay. So the conclusion is we need to write our trigger on account object, on insert operation, and on before event. So as we have all these things, we will write trigger now. So this is a brand new one. People who wants to learn and practice, you can follow me along. So you can actually do along with me. So to create a trigger, you can do it from developer console. So from developer console, you can create any kind of code except for Lightning Web Components. Lightning Web Components cannot be done from developer console. So to open developer console, click on setup, and then you should be seeing a developer console option. Click on that. Now we will be having a window where we can create the Apex trigger. So click on this. So to create Apex trigger, you need to click on file and then click on new. You see, there is an Apex trigger option. So click on this Apex trigger. So it will ask you the name and as object. So as we have seen in the previous scenario, let me open the notepad. So the object has to be account and operation is insert and event is before, right? So this is for scenario one. Scenario one. This is the conclusion. We got it, right? Now, so it is asking for us to select the S object. So as we have seen in the notepad, so the object is account. So select on account. So give some meaningful names. Usually I will give the object name and the trigger. Okay. So name shouldn't have spaces in between. You can use underscore. So I will just use like this, so account trigger. And then click on submit. Now trigger has been created. So if you see, we have trigger name that we have given and the object selection is also given. But how does this before insert has come into picture? So it's actually a default value that Salesforce has given. Okay. So as per our previous conclusion, the object has to be account, operation has to be insert, and event has to be before, right? So if you see the default value that Salesforce has provided for us is very much matching with our event and operation. So we'll leave like that. Okay. If your event is after, you need to change this to after. If your operation is update, you need to change it accordingly. So this is the syntax how to write a trigger. So trigger, the trigger name, and then account. So this is actually given by Salesforce itself. We haven't done anything. Even the events are matching with our scenario. That's the reason we are not touching it. Okay. So this trigger basically says whenever user creates an account, so when it says inserts an account, this trigger will be called. That one before only. So before the record is inserted, this trigger will be called. Okay, let us see whether it is getting called or not. So to check that, we can use debug log, okay, which is debug statements. I'm in trigger. Please confirm me if I'm getting called. Okay. So how to test this? So whenever you write debug log statements, you can see once you check it. So we will insert a record, we'll insert an account, and we can see the debug log statements here. Okay. So go to account tab and then click on new. Just give test123 and then click on save. So we created an account. So ideally our trigger has to be called automatically. So let us see that. So if you see here, it says we have 3 debug logs. So I will open, you need to open all of the 3 if you're not really sure, but as this size is bigger, I'm opening this. So if you have written any debug log statements, if you want to see them directly, you can just click on debug only. By clicking on the checkbox, you're asking Salesforce to display only the statements that are in system.debug log. It says, I'm trigger at the rate. Please confirm me if I'm getting called. Of course, you're getting called. You see, this is how trigger is getting called. Okay. Now the next step is, as trigger is getting called, we need to write our logic to pre-populate the shipping address from billing address. Okay. So how you will write it? So to understand this, so trigger has to, so if you need to pre-populate billing address to shipping address, you definitely need that record, right? Only if you have the access to that record, you can take the billing address value and then you need to put it in shipping address value. Okay. Now, as trigger is getting called automatically, trigger has something called context variables. Okay. What is context variables? It seems pretty tough. No, it is not. Context variables are something like, they're nothing but values or variables which developer needs to write logic. Yeah. If you see what we need at this point of time, we need to have access to that record so that we can take the billing address and then populate it into shipping address. So if you see, the context variable 1 is context variable 1 is trigger.new. Okay. So trigger.new is basically a list. So if you insert a record, that record will be there in this trigger.new. Trigger.new will be list of the object that has been defined. So this trigger.new will be having account list. Let's say you inserted 1 record, this list will have 1 record. If you inserted 2 records from data loader or workbench or some other data loader tool, then this trigger.new will be having 2 records. If you insert 10 records, 10,000 records, all that list will be there in this trigger.new. Okay. So let us see it's really getting that values or not. Okay. So what we will do is we'll write another system.debug log statement. So we'll just take this out. Inserted record. Okay. Or records. So usually we can only insert 1 record from user interface. So obviously this trigger.new should display only 1 record. Okay. Let us see whether it is working properly. So let's go back again and then click on new record. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, and then click on save. So we have this new record. Let us see. So we haven't given much of a details except for the account name. We haven't given any details, right? So we'll go back here and then open the latest. So these are the latest 3, out of which this seems to be bigger. So I think debug log will be there here. So you need to check all these 3 if it is not there in any of the debug log that you are seeing. Okay. So click on debug log, and if you see inserted record and it says account, and then it is having many fields, all the fields in that account. Okay, billing city, billing state. So we haven't given any of the values, billing city, billing state, billing postal code, and we also have the name that we have given, test 1, 2, 3. And the thing is, ID is null. Why ID is null? We have inserted the account, right? So if we go back to that account is having Salesforce ID. Salesforce ID can be seen on URL, right? So this ID is not populating it here, right? ID equal to null. Why? Why is it? The reason is this particular trigger is getting called on before insert. Before the insert itself, ID will not be generated. Only after the insert it will be generated. Let's make if it is before or after. I mean, let's change from before to after and then save it and then on the same trigger. This trigger.new will be displaying that ID value also. If we open that ID will be populated with so and so ID. Okay. That's how before and after works. Okay. Now that we have understood, Trigger.new will be having the list of all records that got inserted. Okay, at this point of time, only 1 record inserted. That's the reason that list is having 1 record. And if we see billing city, billing state, all the values are empty now. So now we have access to billing city or billing state values, right? So based on that, we'll write logic now. So let's close this, and then I will close this. So let's write an if condition first. So what is this if condition? So all the context variables or the variables which needed to the developer will start with trigger. Okay, these are Salesforce given context variables. Okay, so it will start with trigger only. So trigger dot is before and trigger dot is insert. So basically what it says is if the trigger is getting called on before event and insert, then go into this block. So why we are writing it? Already before insert itself says that block will be called automatically, right? So you will understand why I have written this if condition separately, okay? But this is no harm, right? Because it says this is true. Trigger dot is before returns true if it is a before event. Trigger dot is insert will return true if it is an insert event, okay? As a record is getting inserted before the insert, both of them will be true and this block will be called. So this is how it will be started, okay? So don't worry, we'll understand why this if block is there. Now, as you have seen, this Trigger.new is a list of, it's basically a list. So even though you record one record or 10 record, this will have that list. If you insert one record, this will have one record. Okay. So that is the reason you definitely need to run a for loop on that list. For loop. So what object is it? So the object is account. So we will see account record and then Trigger.new. It's a list. Okay. And then we can write our logic in between. So this particular list will have all the records inserted and we are taking each of the record and then putting into ACC and then this will loop until all the records is done. But as one record is inserted, this loop will be looped only once. Okay. Now what we will do is if we need to actually update shipping address with billing address, correct? So ACC rec. So I will put a debug log statement here in case ACC rec record and loop. Okay, so far we are good with this loop. Now the next thing is we need to update the shipping address with billing address. So ACCREC dot. I remember the field name, so I'm just giving it. Okay, so we need to populate shipping city with billing city, right? Billing city. ACC rec dot shipping country equal to ACC rec dot billing country ACC rec dot billing postal code. Okay. So now we have our billing address populated to shipping address. Okay. However, this copying of billing address to shipping address has to happen only if these values are empty. Okay. That's the reason you need to mention if conditions everywhere. Something like if ACC rec dot shipping city not equals to equals to null or empty, only then we will have this logic. Okay. The same way this one. ACC rec dot. We can just copy out and same with this, this, this. Okay. So as this is misaligned, we'll just realign it. Okay. So I will take this debug log. I think this is unnecessary here. So it is running through loop of all the records. Trigger.new will have the records that are inserted. So list of records that are getting inserted or that got inserted. Okay. Okay. Now it will have the list of records and if shipping address is null, then copy that billing address to shipping city and country to country, state to state, billing to shipping state to billing state, shipping state, billing state to shipping state. So once this population is done, automatically as this is before insert, anyhow that record is coming here before it is getting inserted and you updated billing address to shipping address values and it will go back to the database automatically because as it is anyhow going to the database, this trigger will be just called before it is getting into inserted. So that is the reason. That is the reason. Anyhow, it is going to the database and it came here to see your logic as your logic is pre-population. Once this pre-population is done, that record will be taken out to the database automatically because anyhow that is getting inserted. So that is the reason. Never write insert or update statement in before events because as it is anyhow inserting, right? So as it is anyhow inserting, you really don't need to insert this particular account record. It's already getting inserted as user clicking on save. Just before the insert, it came here. You have shown your logic to pre-populate, and then it will go back to database automatically, and it will get inserted accordingly. So never write insert or update statements in before events. You really don't need to update this particular data or like insert the particular data. Okay. So this is how you need to write your before insert. Let us see whether it is working properly or not. Okay. Click on save. Go back here. So we'll create new account, test scenario 1, and then we'll give building street, test B1, C1, B1, S1, C1. Okay, let's click on save. So the expectation is this data has to be copied over to this fields. Click on save. And then click on details. And if we scroll on, see, building street has been copied to shipping street, and all the other fields has copied into that streets accordingly. Okay. So this is how you need to write your logic to populate data from one field to another field or populate any fields in the same record. So we are done writing the trigger for before insert and for scenario 1. So in this scenario, we learned that Trigger.new is one of the context variable. Now we also have used Trigger.use before and Trigger.is insert also. Okay, so these are another two context variables now. So total in this scenario, we have learned about 3 context variables. So context variables, Trigger.is before, returns boolean, returns true if trigger is running on before event. Okay, so same with the insert. Okay, remember these context variables because they are very much handy. They will be used a lot in writing trigger. So is after returns true if trigger is called when user has done insert operation. Okay, so and then click on save. Scenario number 2. I have another requirement. While user creating an account, if annual revenue provided by user is less than 1000, then write a logic to throw an error to user. How to achieve this? So basically what QA is asking is whenever account is getting created, if the annual revenue, so where is annual revenue? So you see the annual revenue, this is a standard field. So if this value is less than 1000, then they should provide error saying that annual revenue should not be less than 1000, something like that. But at this point of time, it will allow you to create records with the annual revenue less than 1000. Okay. Like we have done in the previous scenario, we need to understand. So how to write the trigger by using which object, operation, and event. So object can be determined by trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. In this scenario, where user is creating an account, if annual revenue provided by user is less than 1000. So basically user is inserting an account and then we need to provide this error if it is not matching this condition. Okay. So trigger has to be written on account object here. So object would be account. Now the next one is object is account. Now next one is operation. So operation can be determined by the action that user has performed. So in this scenario, the action is while user creating an account. Basically, he is inserting an account and then this logic has to be checked. So the operation would be creation or like the insert operation. Okay, so far we are done with object and operation. Now the event. So event can be determined by before or after event can be found by using our thumb rule. So you remember our thumb rule? So thumb rule says if we need to update or pre-populate any fields on the same record, or to fire an error validating the record, then go with before event. So in our scenario, we need to validate the record checking for annual revenue less than 1000. So this particular scenario is matching with before insert. As this, we need to fire an error validating that record, we need to go ahead with this before event. So the event would be before. So finally, the conclusion is for this scenario, we need to write a trigger on account object, insert operation, and the event would be before. Let's do that in Salesforce. So as per the scenario 2, we need to write the trigger on object account, and operation is insert and event is before. So this is pretty much same like the previous scenario, right? So it's the same object operation and event. So which means we need to write our logic in the same trigger and in the same block also. Okay, because for one object, the recommended thing is Salesforce always recommend us to write one trigger only. So account is already having a trigger, so we need to write the same. Uh, so we need to write our code in the same trigger. Okay. Now we will open the developer console and write our logic. So let me open the developer console. So in this case, account trigger. So whenever account is getting inserted, it is coming into this trigger. So as we have written before insert, it will come into this before insert. And these are the conditions I told you. As if it is before, it will be true. And this, if it is record is inserting, this will be true. So it will go into this condition. Now, if you insert one record, this Trigger.new will be having a list of records that are getting inserted. And then it is checking the condition. Now the thing is, we need to check in this for loop only. We need to check one more condition saying that if this account record dot annual revenue is less than 1,000, we need to provide error. Simple. So we will write a condition. So this particular scenario which we have written here is part of scenario 1. Okay. Now we are writing for scenario 2. Okay. Scenario 2, which is throw error if annual revenue is less than 1,000. Okay. So the condition would be if ACCREC dot annual revenue less than 1,000, then we need to show an error. So throwing an error is something which can be done from triggers. So we have a method called add error. So that error method, we can use it something like this. So we need to mention the record name and we need to mention add error method and mention that. And you can mention the error name here. Annual revenue less cannot be less than 1,000 and then save it. So this way, whenever you insert an account, it will come here. In that, it will loop through that list. As list is having only one record, it will go inside. It will check the revenue. If it is less than 1,000, it will show an error. If it is greater than 1,000, then it will come down and then it will populate the billing address and shipping address accordingly. Let us see how it is working now. So we'll go back to Salesforce again, UI, and then we'll create a new account. So this is all about in insert operations only. So I'll create test account and I will scroll down. I will give billing address and in the annual revenue I will provide value something around 155, okay, which is less than 1,000. So the expectation is as we have given less than 1,000, it should throw an error and it should not copy the billing to shipping address because anyhow that should not work, right? So if I click on save, it should throw an error saying that annual revenue cannot be less than 1,000. Simple. If I give 1,000, then it will process. So which means our condition, this condition will be bypassed and it will go down and then our logic of scenario 1 will be executed accordingly. So we'll go back here and then as I have given 1,000, so less than 1,000, it will error. So if it is equal to 1,000 or greater than that, it will go forward. So click on save. Now if I open the details, see the values are copied over from billing to shipping address. So this is how you can pre-populate the fields from before insert, and you can file error based on conditions. Scenario number 3. I have another requirement. When user created an account, write a logic to create contact with same name and associate account and contact. How to achieve this? So what Cuba is asking is, so this is accounts tab, right? So whenever user creates an account, let's say test account, and then he just saves it. Okay, he just saves it. An account will be automatically created, of course. So as we are creating an account, it will be created. However, as per the requirement which asked by QY, a contact also has to be created under this account with the same name as the account name that we have given. So we need to write a logic to create a contact whenever account is created by user. Now we need to write trigger for this requirement. So now we need to understand trigger has to be written which object and with what operation and which event. We can determine that by using this text here. So which object? So for object, trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. In this scenario, when user created an account, so basically user is creating an account and we need to write this logic to create a contact. So user is creating an account. So the object would be account. Now what operation? Operation here is the action that user has performed. So here the user is actually even user created an account. So basically he is creating an account, which means insert operation. So the operation would be insert. Now the event, before or after event can be found by using our thumb rule. So what is our thumb rule? Thumb rule says if we need to update or pre-populate any field on the same record or to fire an error validating the record, then go with before event. But in our scenario, we are neither doing pre-populating or we are not validating that record. Hence, in any other condition, we need to jump to after event. As we are creating a new contact for that account, so basically we need to go for after. So the event would be after. Let's see how we can code that in trigger. Now we need to write our trigger. So we need to write our trigger on. So basically after the conclusion for scenario 3, we understood that object should be account and operation should be insert and event must be after. Okay. However, we already written a trigger on account, but we have written trigger on before insert event. So let me open that trigger. So let me open this trigger, and if you see, we have written the trigger where we have done two scenarios: one to pre-populate billing address to shipping address, and we also written another logic to throw an error whenever revenue is less than 1,000. Okay. Now this is on before insert event, but as per our scenario, we need to write logic for after insert. So how we write it? So basically, whenever you write trigger on an object, one object should contain only one trigger. So you need to use the same trigger for writing after insert also. So as we already have used before insert here, to add our after insert, you just need to use comma and then add your after insert. Okay, so this is how you can add multiple events and then you can write your own trigger. So this is the syntax. This is the way of writing multiple events by using commas. So as total we have how many events? 7 events. If you remember, we have before insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, and after undelete. So you can write all the 7 events by using comma separated thing here. So we currently for scenario 3 we are using after insert. Okay. Now this is when this if condition will come in handy. Sorry. So we have trigger.is before and trigger.is insert. So on before insert it will go into this if block and then it will execute our code. But in after insert we need to write a separate code to create a contact. So like we have done for before insert this if condition, we will do it for after also. So let me show that to you. So what I will do here is before insert logic to be written and below block. Okay. Now we have written our before block. We need to write our after block also. And then after insert logic to be written in this below block. Okay. So if we need to write trigger dot is after and trigger dot is insert. So what happens is whenever a record is inserted, just before it is getting inserted, it will call this below block and it will do this logic. And once that record is inserted, it will come to this block. This is how trigger works. Now that we have understood this if block will be called after the record is inserted, we need to write our code. So whether you are inserting one record or 10 records, definitely you need to put that trigger.new. We have the trigger.new, right? Which is a list of, so I have added here context variable trigger.new, list of records that are getting inserted. So let's say insert an account with contact name test. It should create a contact with name test. So we will write account ACC rec and then trigger.new. So what we should do? So for each of the account, we need to create each contact. Let's say we insert one account, we should create one contact. So first we'll create a list of contacts. Okay. Con list to insert a new list. Okay. We have created this list. So this kind of coding is called bulkification of trigger, because whenever it inserts a one account or it gets 10 accounts get inserted from data loader and such, it should work in the same way. That's the reason we are putting this trigger.new in a for loop, and then we are working on the logic. So for each of the account, we need to create contact, right? So we'll just create contact instance, new contact, con dot. So contact will be having set of fields. We need to assign the last name. Contact should be having a last name field. First name field, we also having a last name field equals. So contact name should be equals to account record, which is getting inserted, because the each account that got inserted will be there in this ACC REC. And then we need to get that name, and then we will assign it to con.last name. And once contact is inserted, we need to assign this contact, or like associate this contact, or make we need to make this account to be a parent of this contact. So that's the reason every contact is having an account ID field. We just need to map that account ID field here, ACCR. So before the account is getting created, account ID will not be available. So that's one of the reason we are actually putting this logic in after. So once that account is inserted, only then we will be having the ID, right? So we have the ID, and then we are associating with the contact ID, contact's account ID. So we have created the contact instance, but we need to add this contact instance to this list. Okay. Con list to insert dot add, and then we need to add that contact instance. So basically we are inserting one account. So this trigger dot. So once that account is inserted, it will go into this if block, because as record is already inserted by then. So after insert will return true. Both of them will return true. It will come to this logic where we are for looping on that list. So at that point of time, trigger.new will be having only one account. So account record will be looped. So we are creating a contact instance, and account name will be populated to contact last name, and account ID is populated to contact's account ID to parent it. And then we are adding into a list. Once we add that list, we need to insert this contact list. So that is something which we will do at the bottom. So if we need to check the size, of course, insert dot size. So whenever you are inserting a list, you definitely need to check the size before you are doing it. Just do insert and then con list to insert. So this is how you can actually insert a list. You think this is done? Of course this is done. Basically we have after insert block where we have looping all the accounts which are getting inserted, and then we are creating instance of for each of the account and then putting into a list. Finally we are inserting the contacts. So let's try this and then see whether it is working as expected or not. So click on save, and then we'll go back. We'll create a new account. Okay. So click on new, test, scenario 3. Okay, this is the name of our account. So this is scenario 3, right? Yes. And click on save. And then it should create a contact. You see a contact has been created. This is the account, and new contact has been created. Let me open this contact. So contact last name is should be matching with our account ID. So account. So scenario 3. This is the last name and account name. So this is how you need to do your logic in after insert. So we have learned a new context variable here, which is after. Okay. So let's copy this one and paste it. Oh, so this is for insert. I did paste it before. So it's insert, and this is after. Returns true if trigger is called after the record is inserted. After the record is inserted or updated. Okay. So this we have done so far. So we are so far done with 4 context variables. There are yet more to come, but yeah, this is the list. So this is our after insert block, and this is our before insert block. Okay, and we just need to mention this is scenario 3. Scenario number 4. I have another requirement. When user updates account record, if user changes account name, throw an error saying that account name once created cannot be modified. How do you achieve this? So basically what Cuba is saying is whenever user tries to update the account name, so we have the account name, right? So if we change this account name to so and so value, it should not change. It's like our name in passport. So we cannot change it, right? It's not easy to change it, right? So in the same way, I think in account, users shouldn't be able to change their account once it is created. So I'm clicking on this save. Now it is getting updated. However, the requirement is if someone changes account name, it should not get updated. It should throw an error. For this scenario, we need to write trigger. So which object, which operation, which event. So we'll see that. So the object can be determined by trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. So in this scenario, when user updates account record, so basically user is updating account record, which means the object would be account and operation. Now which operation? The action that user has performed, insert, update or delete. In this scenario, he is actually when user updates account record. So basically user is doing an update operation. So trigger has to be written on update operation now. So operation would be update. Finally, event. So whether it is before or after event can be found by using our thumb rule. So what our thumb rule says, if we need to update or pre-populate any field or fields on the same record or to fire an error validating the record, then go with before event. In our scenario, we are actually trying to throw an error when user changes the account name. So as we want to fire an error, this is coming under this condition. Hence, we need to go ahead with before event. So the conclusion is we need to write trigger on account object on before update event. Let's see how we'll code that in trigger. So let's see the events again. So as per the scenario 4, we need to write account object trigger on before update event. We already have our account trigger written, right, for before insert and after insert events. We also need to write our before update event in the same trigger. So let's open that trigger. Now we need to write our before update logic here. So we already have after insert logic that have we written for creating a contact, and before insert has been written for 2 scenarios. One is for throwing an error, second one is for pre-populating it. Now to write our before update logic, first we need to add our event in this one. So if you don't add that event here, this will not get called on your event. Okay, if you want to write logic on so and so event, you need to mention that event here. Okay, before update. If you don't write it here on before update, trigger will not be called. If you write that event here, then only and whenever you're doing an update, this trigger will be called. As simple as that. So we need to write a similar logic like this for before update. Okay, so before update logic to be written in this below block. Okay, now we'll write if condition if trigger dot is before, and we'll be seeing a new context variable here, trigger dot is update. Okay, so this is the block where you need to write your logic whenever a record is updated. Just before the update, if you want to write your logic, you need to write it here. In our scenario, we need to write our logic to throw an error if account name is changed. Now the problem here is how you will know the account is changed, account name is changed. So we have our trigger.new, right? So we can use the trigger.new, but the trigger.new will have the record insert that got inserted, and if you can trigger.new will also have the values whenever you update a record. So whenever a record is updated, if you want to see the values of it, you can see it in trigger.new. However, trigger.new will have the values of the latest value. Let's say you changed account name from Shrikant to Shrikant1. So trigger.new will be having the record with the name value is equal to Shrikant1. It will not show any clue that the previous value is Shrikant, and it will not also say that it has been changed in the first place. So that's the reason you will never find the value or like the previous value in trigger.new. Okay. So then what is the solution here? So like Salesforce has provided many context variables, Salesforce has also provided another context variable. That context variable is called trigger.old. As the name suggests, new will be having the record which with the latest values. Trigger.old will be having the list of records which are having the old values of the same record. The previous values will be there in trigger.old, the new values will be there in trigger.new. Okay. So let's see whether it is really looking the same. Okay, we'll debug log it and then you will understand. Old values and the new context variable is system.debug trigger.old. Okay, this is our new context variable. Hey trigger.old, welcome to the club. And then click on save. So now we'll see whenever you are updating a record with the name, then we'll see the latest values has to be in trigger.new. And let's say I change from Srikanth to Srikanth1, the value Srikanth1 to be there in the trigger.new. Srikanth should be there in trigger.old. Let's see that, okay? So let me click here. Let me open an account. So click on test123. So I will just change the account name from test123 to test123 updated, okay? And then we'll click on save. So as soon as I click on save, if I go to the developer console and then open the logs, so this is having the message, I think this should be it. And then click on debug only. So the new values, if you see, the new value says the name is equal to, if you see, let me test123 updated. Okay. Old values, it's the same list. If you see, it's the same ID, same record. However, it will be having the old value test123. So by comparing this record and this record, we can say that whether it is updated. So this record's name not equals to this record's name, then obviously we can understand that the name has been changed. Simple. Okay. Now we have this trigger.new and trigger.now. However, we need to bulkify this code. So if we need to bulkify it like that, so we need to compare the names. Okay. So which is like you need to write for loop on this new list. And for each of that new list, you need to compare each of the old list. And then you need to write your comparison logic like new list record dot name not equal to old list variable dot name. It's like new list of something like that. Okay. Then you need to throw an error saying that add error. It's just an algorithm. It's not the actual code. The syntax would not be same. But this is how you need to do it. If you are using this list, you need to use two for loops. So this kind, and because of this thing only, we have maps. Okay. So Salesforce has created maps for you where you need to create ID, key value pair kind of thing. However, so for this kind of scenarios, Salesforce has expected this kind of scenarios would be quite common. That's the reason Salesforce has given another two context variables on new and old list. So those context variables are trigger.new map. It's the same list except that is a map. It's a list is converted into a map where key will be the ID of that record and value would be the actual record. So trigger.old map. Okay. Ding, ding. So let us see how they are looking. So basically, new map will be having ID and value of, record with new values. Okay. Same here. ID. ID is the key and record with old values. That's how it looks like. So let's click on save and then let's see how that looks like. We'll also see how it is looking like in the debug log. So let me open another account. So test account maybe, and then I will change it. Instead of test account, I will make it to updated and then click on save. And if I open the developer console again and then open the latest log, click on debug only, which will open statements. If you see new values and it's a new list, it's that new test trigger.new where it says the new value, which is test account updated. And the next one is the map where it says this is the key. Key will be the ID of that record and this is the record. So key and that record will be having the same new value. And this is the old trigger.old list where it has the name as test account, which is the previous value. and this is the key value pair. This is key value is ID, value is the actual record. So in that record, the name is test account. So by using this map, you can actually do the comparison easily without multiple for loops. Else you need to do two for loops and then do it. So in this scenario, let me show you how I will be using that map and then comparing these records. Okay. First, I will just run the loop on the new list. Okay. I will just run the same loop like I'm doing it here. So account ACC REC and then trigger.new. So whenever you need to compare, so this is a very common scenario to compare. Let's say you need to, if this particular value is changed, you need to do so and so logic. So that kind of scenarios will come very quite often. So this is the way that you need to do the comparison. So remember this scenario, this will be very much handy. I have done this kind of comparison like 50 to 100 times in my complete career. So that's kind of usage this particular scenario is having. So now we'll change the variable of this one first. So instead of ACCRSC, we will just add new so that it is easy for us to refer. That's it. Now we need to compare it. So we need to compare this new record. So new record will be there in trigger.new, right? New value will be there. So let's say enter Srikanth. I change it to Srikanth1. Srikanth1 will be there. This ACC record new.name. Okay. We need to have the old record also, old account record also, which is if we want to grab that, we will create new variable IC old. So this is a variable which has to hold the old record values. So for that, we will use trigger.old map. So trigger.old map is basically a map. So from map, if you want to get the value or like the record of it, you need to use get operator. So by using that get operator, you can get that old record. However, in get operator, we need to provide the key value. What is the key? Old map and new map will be having the same keys, which are the record IDs. So we can use the record ID of the new record value, which is ACC REC new.id. As old map and new map or old records and new records are having the same record IDs. IDs would be same. Only other field values, something like name, phone, billing address, billing city, etc. will be changed. So that's the reason if you ask old map with the record ID of the new record, it will fetch that old record value with the old values. Okay. Now ACC record new, ACC REC new will be having the values which are new, which is like Srikanth1 will be stored there, and ACC REC old, if you want to grab it, the old value which is Srikanth will be stored in this account record. Okay. So now we will do the comparison. Okay. If ACC REC new dot name not equals to ACC REC old dot name. So basically this is the comparison. This is the new record or like a record with new values, and this is the record instance which is having the old values. So new values dot name and old record old values dot name does it match? Basically name has been changed. If this condition matches, basically the name has been changed. In that case, we need to provide an error. What is that error? So ACC REC new dot add error. This is the method. I think we already have seen in the previous scenario. So add error is the method. We just can give something like this. Account name cannot be modified or changed once it is created. Okay. So let us save this. And what is the error? Oh, yeah. So just take this space out. Done. So let's save this one. So whenever you want to compare, so basically these kind of scenarios are very much common. Whenever you need to compare, saying that if that particular field has been changed, do so and so logic. This kind of scenarios are very much common. So if you want to compare between phone, you need to do the same. ACCREC new dot phone not equals to ACCREC old dot phone. Same with any other field. You can do multiple fields. So comparisons has to be done like this. Get that old map and get as the record ID so that it will give you the record for which will be having old values, and you can compare with old and new record values like this. So let's test this out. So I will quickly go back to the Salesforce, and then I'll open one account and I will try to change this account name. So test account updated now. And then if I click on save, it should provide me an error saying that you cannot modify it. You see, account name cannot be modified or changed once it is created. And voila, this is how you can add validations in before update by comparing old and previous values. In this scenario, you need to really understand how I have done this comparison. This is very common scenario. And let's comment this out quickly. And yeah, and we have learned new context variables, right? Which are old map, old, new map, and we also have learned old. So let's add that one also. So context variable has to be, so context variable 5 is trigger dot new map. So returns the list of records that are inserted or updated with latest values. Okay, and it's the same thing. We can do the same thing for old map, except that it has to be having old map returns the list of records that are inserted or updated with old or prior values. Okay, let's say I change from Srikanth to Srikanth 1. Srikanth 1 will be there in new map, Srikanth will be there in old map. Simple. So, and that too, and we need to mention in map format. In map format. Okay, and we also got new context variable, which is old, trigger.old. It's the same thing, new map and old map. So which will be having the old or prior values. Yeah, that's done. It is the list of records that are inserted or updated with old or prior values. Done. We forgot one context variable here, which is update. So is update. So we have before, is insert, is after, right? The same way we should be having is update. So this is the context variable we have used here. So is update, and the context variable number is 8. Returns true if trigger is called when record is updated. Simple. And then yeah, so we are done with the context variables for all these 4 scenarios. Scenario number 5. I have another requirement. On user updating account record, if billing address is changed, update all its child contacts mail address field same as the account's billing address. How to achieve this? So what Cuba is asking here is, so let me open any account that Salesforce has already given. So let's say this Edge communication. So we have an account which is Edge communication and it is having 2 contacts. Okay. Now if we go to details and user changes the billing address here, then automatically we have in contact, we have addresses in contacts for each of the contacts. So this is the first contact and this is the second contact. So in the first contact, the address, which is the address here, this address has to be updated based on this address. So let's say if I change this address to something, then automatically that value has to be reflected both in contact 1 mailing address and contact 2 mailing address, which are associated with this account. For this scenario, we need to write the trigger. So which object, which operation, which event, that can be determined here. So object trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. So in this scenario, here on user updating account record. So hence the object would be account and the operation now. The action that user has performed. In here, user is actually updating account record. So in that case, the operation would be update. And finally, event. Before or after event can be found by our thumb rule. So what does our thumb rule says? If we need to update or pre-populate any field on the same record, or to find an error validating the record, then go to before event. In our scenario, we need to update the record. However, we need to update its child records, not on the same record. So user is updating account and then child records has to be updated as per the logic. But in here, this is completely different. This is updating the same record or firing an validation error. As this is not satisfying this particular condition here, we need to go ahead with after event. In any other condition, jump to after event. So the event would be after. So we need to write trigger on account on after update event. Let's see how we can do this in Salesforce. So let me recap the requirement again. So we have account, which is associated with 2 contacts, contact 1 and contact 2. So on account, if billing address is changed, that address has to be copied over to its to contacts. Contacts was mailing address and contacts to change mailing address. So this has to happen when our account updates its billing address. User updates billing address on this account. So as we have already understand, we need to write trigger for this scenario on account object on after update event. So let's open our developer console and the trigger that we have written. As we already know, we are writing trigger on account. So that's the reason we need to use the same trigger again, because we need to write one trigger for one object. That's the recommendation. So we have already three events that we have added here. We need to do the after update event, right? So if we want to add our after update event, we just need to add this here after update. So this is how you need to add your new event every time you are working on the same trigger. Okay. So as you already know, if you want to run your block, once the record is updated, like after the update, you need to write your if condition again. So after update logic to be written in this below block. We'll just follow the same thing that we have done before. So before update, we have written like that, after insert, and before insert. The same we will write it again for after update also. If trigger dot is after and trigger dot is update, then we need to write our logic here. So what is the logic? If as account is getting updated, then it will come to this logic. We need to check if the billing address is changed. If with the billing address is changed, only then we need to go forward and then update our contacts. So to check whether a particular field value has been changed or not, we already done that thing, right? So we can just get that old record and we need to run the for loop. We need to check the old record and then we need to get that name and then the previous values name, and then we just compare it. In the same way, we need to write for loop here also. So first we need to loop here on account ACC record new, and we need to run on trigger.new. Now we need to understand, let's say we have inserted or like we updated one account, this trigger.new will be having one account. Let's say we have updated 10 accounts from data loader or workbench as such, this trigger.new will be having 10 records then. Okay. Now we need to compare it with the, we need to get the old values record also now. So how we will get it? So we'll create an instance here, account ACC rec old, and right, we just you need to use the old map here. So which is the same as this. We need to get trigger dot old map. So what does that old map? It returns the list of records that are inserted or updated with the old prior values in map format. So this is old map. Old map will get the complete records list, which will be having the prior values. Okay. So in this map, we need to get our record by using the get function, and we need to check. We need to get that record by using its ID. So get rec new dot ID. Yeah. So now that we have, so from this map, we are getting our record ID, which will be having our old values in this account now. We just need to compare these values and these values, billing city, billing state, billing address as such. But at this point of time, I really don't want to compare each and every field. So in our scenario, let's go back here. And if we see, we have what is the first billing field? It's a billing street. So we'll just write it only on billing street logic. So if ACC rec new dot billing street not equals to ACC rec old dot billing street. So if both are not equal, that means that billing address has been changed. We are particularly only checking on billing street. We really don't want to check every other field on that billing address. If you want, you can just put OR operator and then ACC dot billing city not equal to ACC old dot billing city and so on. You can just do that. But in this scenario, I wanted to only check billing street change here. So now that we understood if both of them are different, that means this particular record is basically got changed. This will be records. This particular account billing address has been changed. Okay. We need to track that account ID here. So we need to put that account in a set here. I will tell you why we are using set here. So ID and then ACC IDs which got billing address changed. Okay, new set. So this is a bulkification of code. That's the reason we are using this kind of logic. Else it is like, we know whatever account has been done, we just really don't need to have sets and all. But this is bulkification of code. If 10 records got updated and out of which only 3 records updated its billing address, this set should capture those account IDs for which a billing address has been changed. So dot add, by using add operator, you can add your account IDs into this set. So ACC rec new.id. So what we have done so far? So we have compared we compared the old value and new value of that record. If the billing street has been changed, then we are adding that account ID into a set because we need to query the contacts also, right? And only then we can update the contacts. So at this point of time, we got, let's say if we insert one account and if that billing address has been changed, this set will be having one record. Let's say you have updated 10 account records from Workbench or from data loader. This will loop for 10 times, and this if condition will check if billing address has been changed for each of the account. Let's say out of those 10, only 3 accounts are being updated with that billing address. Then this particular list will be having those 3 account IDs. That set, which is this set, this set will have account IDs which got billing address changed. Okay. As this is bulkification, this is how always you need to work on. Okay. And then as we got this set, this is the time to query the contacts. So don't actually query contacts separately. You can just do it on accounts. I will tell you why we are doing like this, but yeah, accounts with contacts. You can query accounts and contacts in a single query. Okay. So how to do that? Select ID, comma, maybe name. And if we want to get its child records also, let's say for one account we have 2 contacts. So this is how they will get it. So select ID, select ID, name maybe, and we also need to from contact. So in this inner query, whenever you are using, you need to have this contacts instead of contact. It should be contacts. So in this scenario, whenever you are querying contacts within a single query of account, you just need to use contacts, not contact. Okay. So in a single query, you just need to use select ID name from contact. But if you are using with account, like in this inner query, you definitely need to use contacts. That's the name Salesforce has given. Okay. Where we should be getting all the accounts along with its contacts. What are the accounts we need to get it? We need to get only the accounts in its contacts where billing address has been changed. This set is having the list of account IDs for which billing address changed, right? So we'll just query based on this. So where ID in or this particular set. Now this query will be having all the accounts. This query will be having all the accounts for which contact's address has to be changed. However, we need to get the billing city, billing address completely from here. So billing city, because we need to put it in contacts, right? So billing street, billing state, billing country. Let's have only these 4. Okay. So what we would do is we need to run loop on this and then we will update the contacts. Okay. So we need to have a separate list where we need to add our contacts. So list of contacts, contacts list to update, and this is an empty list. Contact. Okay, now we need to run for loop on these accounts, and then for each of the contact, we'll change the address. So for loop on this account ACC, and then we need to get this one. So we need to get all the contacts list, right? So what we will do is contacts, contact. We will put all the contacts in a list first. CONs of the looped account. And we can actually grab that account's contacts by using this kind of thing, this kind of value. So acc.name will bring acc.a account name. ACC.billing city will give as ACC billing city. In the same way, the contacts of its account can be grabbed by using this ACC.contacts. Whatever name you have used it here, you can get it like this. So by using this, it will return the list of contacts associated with this current account, and we are putting into a list. And in this list, we need to loop it again, and then finally we need to update the billing city into this mailing city. So what we need to do is we need to run loop on that again. Contact CON. We are running loop on this contacts. Okay. And what we need to do? We need to update con dot mailing street is equal to ACC dot billing street. Con dot mailing city equal to account dot billing city. Same with the other fields. Mailing state, billing state. What else is left? Billing street is done, state and country. Con dot mailing country equal to ACC dot billing country. So we have our four field contact. We just updated these contact values, and then we just need to add this contact into our list. So we'll just add this into our list. Add and then CON. Okay. So it will loop through all the contacts of that account, and it will update the billing address into the mailing address, and we are adding each of that contact into this. Let's say we have only one account updated. That one account will be there, and it will fetch its contacts. So in this particular line, we are getting that account contacts. Let's say if we have two contacts will be there in the list. So we are looping through those contacts. So first contact, it will be having the mailing address value populated with the billing address value here, and it will be adding into this empty list. So this is to be looping one contact now. Again, the second contact will be looped here, and then it will update with the billing address from account and into mailing address here, and then it will be added into this list. Finally, this list will be having two contacts with the updated address. Okay, finally, once we are out of these loops, we just need to check the size and then we will update it. So cont lists dot size, whenever you're doing it, always remember whenever you're updating or doing a query, never do that in for loops. Okay. So we will just update it, update. Okay. And click on save. So let's recap what we have done. So here we are, whenever account or accounts getting updated, we are actually comparing the billing addresses. If the billing street has been changed, here we are only checking for one field. If billing street has been changed, we are adding that particular account into a set. So based on that set, we are actually querying the list of accounts for which billing address has been changed. Where we are querying, we are also querying the contacts also in that single query itself. So we are looping all through the accounts for which billing address has been changed, and we are grabbing the accounts of that each account and then looping them, and for each account we are updating the billing address of that account into the respective child contacts, and then we are putting into a list, and finally we are updating that list. So we are done with our programming part. Now it is time for us to test. So we'll go back again here. And then what I would do is, we already have opened this one, right? So currently for Edge Communications, there are two contacts where we have the mailing address as 312 Constitution Palace, and what about this one, 313 Constitution Palace. So I would change entirely. Okay, what I would do is I change the billing address. They should reflect in child contacts. Same as above. Same as above. Maybe this one. And country. Same as above. And then I will click on save now, and we'll see whether these values are updating into these contacts accordingly. Okay. So let's click on save. Okay. Let's check this one out. Refresh this page. And then we should be seeing the latest change here. You see? This contact, I change the billing address. This should reflect in child contacts as same as above, same as above. So let's open this one and refresh this one too. And yeah, we got the mailing address changed. Okay, this is how you can update the child records in the after update event. Scenario number 6. I have another requirement. An active account should not be deleted. How to achieve this? So basically what Cuba is asking here is, so every account will be having something called active field. So it can be either active or inactive by, you can choose that. You see active, it's a drop down, active yes or no. Let's say if we have an account which is having active status, if we are trying to delete this account, it should not let us allow to delete it. So that's what the requirement is. But the scenario will write the trigger. So however, which object, which operation, which event. So that can be determined again by here. Trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. So an account should not be deleted. So basically, user is deleting an account, which means the object is account. Now operation, the action that user has performed, insert, update or delete. In this case, user is actually should not be deleted. An active account should not be deleted. So the operation is delete. And finally, the event. Before or after event can be found by our thumb rule. This thumb rule will help us to determine whether to select before event or after event, primarily on insert and update events, to select on insert and update events. So however, but most of the cases, even in delete operation also, we can actually use this thumb rule. This thumb rule will also help for the scenario which QBI has just asked. So if we need to update or pre-populate any field on the same record or to fire an error validating that record, then go with before event. So in our scenario, we need to fire an error if it is an active account, right? So we need to fire an error. In this case, we need to select before event as per the thumb rule. Hence, the conclusion is we need to write trigger on account on before delete event. Let's see how we can do this in Salesforce. So as we have understood, any account that is having active status yes should not be deleted, should not get deleted. It should file some error. Okay. So to do that, we definitely need to write our trigger. So this for all the scenarios that we have tried earlier can also be done by flows. However, I have shown you how to do that in triggers because so those are very easy scenarios which will help you to understand how triggers work. So this is the scenario. Definitely you need to choose triggers. Let us see how we can do that in Trigger. So before that, we need to understand what is the event. So here it should be on account and before delete. So as we need to write our trigger again on account, we need to open our trigger that we have written earlier. It's the same trigger, except we need to add one more event. So you know, right? So whenever you need to add one more event, you just need to append that event here. So far we have written our trigger on 4 events. Now the new kit on board is before delete. Okay. Now, as you have already seen, every time we are writing an event, and if you want to write some logic for that particular event, you definitely need to write your if block again. Okay. So what you need to do is before delete logic to be written in this below block. Okay. And now we need to write our if condition here. Trigger dot before, sorry, trigger dot is before and trigger dot is delete. So in this scenario, we got new context variable which is delete. So this is a context variable which will let us know that whether this trigger is getting called on delete operation. So whenever this trigger is getting called and before and it is getting deleted just before the deletion, this logic will run. Whatever logic we are writing it here. Okay. So we are telling Salesforce to run this trigger on before delete by putting this event. So if you put this event whenever a deletion happens, just before the delete, this trigger will be called. But to run our logic, you need to write trigger.is before and trigger.is delete. Same with the other events too. Okay. Now trigger.is before and trigger.is delete. Now we need to write our logic here. So what is the logic? We need to look through the records that are getting deleted. So in delete, so now the scenario is in delete whenever you loop through the delete operations, basically you're not giving a new value, you're basically clicking on delete. For that reason, Trigger.new will not be available in before delete operation. So let me point that out. So Trigger.new is not available in delete operations, whether it is before delete or next coming event, which is after delete. Okay. Then how you will understand what is the record that is about to get deleted and how you will know the status of active status of it. Only then you can fire error, right? So if you don't know the status of, or if you don't have the record data into this block, how you would fire an error? So for that you have trigger.old. So trigger.old is available. Okay. So when I say trigger.new, it's both new and new map, which are this one and this one is available. So trigger.old and its map and old map are available in delete operations. Okay, it is on both before delete and after delete also. Now that we have understood, we need to write our for loop on trigger.old. So let us see that. For account ACC old, it should be trigger.old. So we need to look through. Let's say a record is getting deleted, or let's say you are deleting records in bunch, in mass delete. Then all the 10 records, let's say you delete 10 records at once by using data loader or workbench, or you are clicking on all these checkboxes and clicking on delete button at once. Then this trigger.old will be having all those 10 records. If you are just deleting one record, this trigger.old will have that one record. So as we got that list into this for loop, we just need to check the status of it. Here, if ACC old dot active is actually a field that has given by Salesforce equals to yes, then what should happen? So you're trying to delete, then it will come here. If that account status is equal to active status is equal to yes, we need to provide an error. So you remember, right, how to find an error? We have a method called add error. You need to mention the record name and give that error. Okay, add error. You cannot delete an active account. Good. Now we have done our logic. See, very easy. So writing trigger is pretty easy, except that you need to understand what are the context variables. That is it. So let us try this out. Let's test this out. So we'll go back here, and then this is an active account, right? Of course, this is active account. Let's delete this. We have delete button here, and I click on delete, and it says you cannot delete an active account. See, as easy as that. Let's try another account. So this is test123, which doesn't have any contacts. Let's see. Yeah, let's make this active status. Yes. And then click on save. And if we try to delete this one again, and it should show an error saying that you cannot delete an active account. Let's say we'll make this active to no, and then we'll try to delete this account. Okay. And then click on delete. Now this is active no. So expectation is this record get deleted because the active status of the record is no. Okay. See, the record got deleted. And voila. Scenario number 7. I have another requirement. Whenever user deletes an account, send a confirmation email to the user. How to achieve it? This is very much self-explanatory. So for that also we need to write our trigger. So on which object, which operation, which event can be determined here. Trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. In this scenario, user deletes account. So basically the object is account. Operation now. The action that user has performed. In here, user deletes account. So the operation is obviously delete, and before or after event can be found by our thumb rule. As per the thumb rule, if we need to update or pre-populate any field on the same record or to find an error validating the record, then go with before event. Else, we need to use after event. In our scenario, neither of these conditions matches, so we need to go for after event. Hence, the conclusion is we need to use account object for trigger on after delete event. Let's do that logic in Salesforce now. So basically, whenever this account is deleted, we need to receive an email. So let's say I delete this record, then I should be receiving a confirmation email. Okay, to do that, we definitely need to go to trigger. So as per the scenario, we need to write a trigger on account object and after delete event. Already we have a trigger on account object, so we need to open the same trigger and then we need to add our logic. So go to developer console and we already have 5 events. Now we need to add our 6th event. So after delete. So by adding this event here, we are basically telling to Salesforce that whenever deletion happens, after the delete operation, please come to this trigger. So by having this on account deletion, After the deletion operation, Salesforce will come into this trigger to see if there is any logic written on it. So we need to write our logic in our after delete block. So we need to write our after delete block here. So like we have done for before delete and other after update, etc. So we need to write our if block here. So it should be after delete logic to be written in this below block. Okay. Now we need to write our if condition. Trigger dot is after and trigger dot is delete. Now we need to write our logic here. So what is the logic? Sending of email to sending email to a user who has deleted the record. Who deletes the record. Okay. Now in here we also need to understand, as we have discussed earlier, Trigger.new and Trigger.only will not be available. Why they are not available? Whenever you open a record and provides new values to it and then save it, that new values data or the record instance will be stored in this Trigger.new. The previous values instance will be stored in Trigger.old in the form of list. You have done 10 records update or 10 records insert, those values should be stored accordingly in this list accordingly. Whenever you are doing delete operation, there is no chance that you will be providing new values on that, right? So hence Trigger.new is not available because you're not providing any new values there. Trigger.only is something as the old values are already there, you're just deleting that record. Hence Trigger.only is available in delete. Okay. Having been said that, we need to send emails, right? To send emails, we need to process the record. Once we process the record, we will get the account name, etc. And then we will use that account name to send emails. Okay. So we need to run loop on the records. So account ACC old trigger dot old. Okay. Now in here we need to write our logic. So remember this, whenever you want to send email, this is a standard code snippet. You can find it in Google very easily. Okay. So I just remember the code. I think so at least. So we'll try to see if we can write that directly. So new messaging dot single email message. So we have created this single email message instance. So here we need to provide the to address. To address. To address basically takes email addresses in the form of list. Okay, so to whom we need to send this email? So the person who has deleted it, basically the current user who is actually who is actually deleting it, we will take that email ID. So we need to create the email list first. So string email is because whenever you send emails, there is a chance that two can be given multiple emails, right? That is the reason email to address is basically it will take strings, but we want to send it only to the persons. Even though we want to send it for single person or multiple persons, we just need to add that into a list of string first. Okay, email addresses new. So this is an empty list at this point of time. Now we need to add the current user email address into this email address list. So current user email address can be found by using standard method, which is called userinfo dot get user email. I think it should be there. Yeah, you see, userinfo dot get user email. So you can also get username, user ID, etc. by using this standard method. This is a standard method. Okay, userinfo is a class, and this is a method. So we need to add this email address here. So now we have created the email instance and we have given two addresses the current user email ID. So is it enough? We also need to provide the subject and body also. So we have something called set subject. So in the subject, we will try to provide some text saying that account has been successfully deleted. And I always get confused with successfully word. Yeah. And then plus, now here you need to give the account name. How you will get it? This account ACC old dot name. Simple. So we have the subject. Now we also can write body. You also have some other method like you can set BCC address, CC address. You can also give attachments, etc. Okay. So here I will just make it as set plain template body. Where is plain template? Plain text body. Yeah. And in here, you can just provide the text. Hello, nobody written here. Please report subject. Okay. And then we are done with creating the email instance. However, if there are 10 records deleted, I mean, if there are more than one record is deleted, then we need to send more than one email, right? Whenever you want to send emails in bulk, whenever you want to do DML operations in bulk, whenever you want to do a query do not do that in for loop. So hence we need to add this email instance to a list first. So we need to create a list here. So list. So what kind of list? So this is a single email message for which we can send email. So we need to create this list, email, objs, ding ding, and then this, and then here. So we have email message object. It's a list now, so we need to add all our email messages to this list. Okay, so we by the time this loop ends, we have the email message objects where it will have the email message instances. Let's say you have 10 records deleted, this email objects will have 10 email messages ready to send email. Okay, so to send email we have a method again, so which is messaging dot send email, and in this it will take list. So we'll just take this list and then put it here. So do you think it is done? Yes, this is done. So whenever a record is deleted, after the record is deleted, it will come here and it will create, I mean, we have created an empty list of email messages. And in for loop, if we have one record, this will create a single email message and it will have two address with the current user email ID, subject with so and so, subject with account name, and plain text. It's a simple text. And then finally, we are adding that email instance to a list. So if it is one record, this list will be having one email instance. And if you send email, one email will be sent there. Okay, if we have 10 records, 10 emails will be sent. Simple. So let's save this. What is this error? Which is it? Yeah, it's not to address, it's set to address. Set to address, set to address, set to address. Okay, this is set to address, not to address. Okay, and then we should be good. Okay, now we have our trigger. Let's see how we can test this. So let's go back to this one. So we have this account. So we will try to delete this account here. So we just need to confirm that this is active is not equal to yes. So yeah, or else our before delete scenario will stop us deleting it. I'm deleting this record, so I should be receiving an email. So let's delete this. Click on delete. Our record is deleted. So if you see this email, I got the email saying that account has been successfully deleted and the test account name. That's the name. I should have kept a colon here. But yeah, so you can say that this is look safe. Whenever you get email from Salesforce, you will get this kind of spam. You just need to make it mark it as look safe. Hi, nobody written here, so please report subject. So this is how you can send emails from Trigger. Scenario number 8. I have another requirement. Send an email to the user when user restores an account from recycle bin. How to achieve this? So for this scenario, we need to restore the record from recycle bin. So recycle bin can be found here in App Launcher. We already deleted account, right? The latest record that we have deleted is this, if I'm not wrong. So you can just click on it and then you can make it restore. So by clicking on this, account will be restored back to the account table. Okay. So once restoration is done, current logged in user should be receiving an email saying that so and so account has been restored. That is for our reference. Okay. For this scenario, we need to write the trigger. So which object, which operation, which event? So the object can be determined by trigger has to be written on object on which user will do his action. So send an email to the user when user restores an account from recycle bin. So he restores an account, user restoring an account. So basically the object would be account here. Now the operation, the action that user has performed, insert, update or delete. Neither of these actions he is performing it, he is restoring it. So there is one more operation called undelete operation. Hence the operation is undelete. So trigger has supports this undelete operation. And now the which event. So in undelete operation, Salesforce has only one option. It is after undelete. There is no before undelete. So the conclusion is we need to write a trigger on account object after undelete event. Remember, people will confuse very quickly. In Salesforce, we have only after undelete. There is no before undelete. Remember that we only have after undelete. For this scenario, we need to write a trigger. So trigger has to be written for this scenario is account trigger on after undelete event. So we again need to go to our trigger which we have written earlier. And then if we scroll up, we already have 6 events that written. And we need to add our 7th event. So these are the 7 events that Salesforce allows to write on trigger. Okay. Usually not every time you will be writing all these 7 triggers based on the requirement you would do it, but it is absolutely common sometimes where you need to write all the 7 events. Okay. So on after undelete event that you have added here in the trigger. So whenever undeletion happens, whenever user undeletes or like restores a particular account, then this trigger will be called. So you need to write your logic and your logic will be called. So your logic has to be kept in. Again, another if block where it will say trigger dot. So after undelete logic to be written in this below block. Okay. Now the thing is we need to write our if condition here, which is trigger dot is after and trigger dot is undelete. Okay. So this trigger.undelete is a new context variable. Okay. Now we'll add here. So I think I haven't added this trigger.undelete and trigger.isDelete context variables. Let me add that right away. So these are context variables 9 and 10. So these are standard variables that have been given by Salesforce for us to easily write our code. So isDelete is undelete. So returns true if the trigger is called when the record is deleted, and this is undeleted. Simple. So we have all our context variables covered. There are a couple of other context variables, but these are the primary ones. Okay. Now after undelete, now we need to send email to the current login user. If you see, it's very much same like this previous scenario. I think we can very much use the same logic. Okay. So I think, yeah, let me add that. Sending email to user who deletes, who restores the record. However, we will have trigger.new in undelete operation. Why? Because it is getting as a new record into Salesforce. However, Salesforce ID would be same. Whenever you restore a record, Salesforce ID would be same, but it will be added as a kind of new record because that record was not there. Now it is coming. So that's the reason trigger.new is available in undelete. Okay. Understand undelete is very much same like inserting records. Undelete and insert operation will have same kind of context variables. Okay. So understand undelete as very much like new. Okay. So trigger dot old or old map is not available in undelete. Okay. Now that we have understood trigger dot new is available and trigger dot old is not available, old or old map basically, and new or new map. Now what we need to do is we need to write, basically you need to create a list, same like this. We need to create the list of simple message and we need to create the email messages and then set to address, set subject, set plain body. So we'll just copy paste this. Okay. However, there is small change that you need to do. So instead of trigger.old, it should be trigger.new, and we'll change the variable name also. So account new and account new. So if we see account has been successfully restored, I think this should do. So in after undelete, we are creating a list of email messages, and for each of the record that got restored, it will run loop. Let's say 3 or 4 records can be restored at once, or it can be more. Then 4 email instances will be created with the set to address as the current user email address, and subject is your account has been successfully restored. Plain text body is just a text body, and then finally you are sending email. Send email is the method which is actually sending the email. Okay, here we are actually in the email message. It's like composing of email. This is where you're actually sending email message. I hope this is clear. So let's save this and test this out. and trigger has been saved. So let's restore this out. So we'll go back to recycle bin. So this is the account which I want to restore. And then if I restore this, and if I go to email and then check it, I should be seeing an email. And if you see, I got an email saying that account has been successfully restored and it is test account. Okay. Hello, nobody has written. Nobody written here. Please refer subject. So this is how you can do some logic in after undelete operation. Also, whenever the record is being restored from recyclement, you can do your logics. Simple. So far, the summary is we have gone through all these scenarios, right? So for each of the scenario, we were able to find the right trigger event. So for example, for the first scenario, while user creating an account, if user provides billing address, but not shipping address, we need to write a logic to populate shipping address with billing address, right? For that, we understood that we need to write it in before insert, where while inserting itself, we will write our logic. Before insert itself, we will write our logic. Same with the other scenarios, correct? So in reality, or like in real-time scenarios, you might be getting a requirement something as easy as this, where you might be using only one event for your scenario. You might also get some complex scenarios where you might need to use combination of events, something like before insert, after insert, or like before insert, before update, or after insert, after update, after delete, or before delete, after undelete. So it can be of any combinations. You name it. It's based on the requirement. You might need to choose the trigger events. Let me explain that with an example. So in this case, we have find out some of the sample combos. So before insert and before update can be one combo for a given requirement. After insert, after update, after delete can be another combo for another requirement. And before delete, after delete can be a combo for another requirement. Let us see that. So first requirement is throw error if phone number is empty. So whenever an account or like a contact is getting inserted, if the phone number is empty, if you want to throw some error, you can do that in before insert and before update. You know, right? So we have the thumb rule. Whenever you want to throw an error or pre-populate field on the same record, then you need to use before events. So in our case, while creating itself, they can give phone number empty, or they might be updating the existing phone number to be empty. So in both the cases, we need to throw error. That's the reason you need to select before insert and before update. So sample combination 2. Sending an email if new or existing accounts active status is set to active. Let's say we have active field on account. While creating the record itself, they might set it to active. They can also update an existing account to set it to active. So in both the cases, we need to send email. So that's the reason we have after the insert, if they have the value active status value true, then you need to send email. Same with after update. So if someone changes the active status from not active to active, then also you can send email in after update. However, there is one more event here. So after undelete, let's say an existing account which is deleted and that is an active status, you're trying to restore it, and then also it is an active status, right? It's like a new record there. That's the reason after undelete also you can write your send email logic. Now comes sample combo 3. Here we have two events, before delete and after delete. Let's see the requirement. Don't let active account to be deleted. You already know, right? If you want to throw an error when an account is getting deleted, you can write it in before delete. Because before the delete itself, you can check whether the account status is active or not, and then throw an error. And if inactive account is deleted, delete its child custom object records also. Let's say an account high is being deleted and it is an inactive account will be automatically deleted because we will not stop it. So as it is an inactive account. However, we also need to delete all its child custom object records. So that we need to do it in after delete. So in this way, based on the scenarios, you need to select your combination of events. It can be a single event, it can be multiple events, it can be combination of any events or all the events also. It's based on the requirement. Always try to break your requirement into pieces and then try to find your events. It's very easy. Now we will see best practices while writing Apex triggers. There are multiple best practices that you need to follow. We'll see one by one. First best practice is one trigger per one object. So let's say in our previous scenario, we have written all our 7 or 8 scenarios in one trigger itself. So we should be doing that in one trigger. All our logic has to be kept in a one trigger. Salesforce will still allow you to put it in multiple triggers, but do not do that. The reason is, let's say we have two triggers. Let's say we have two triggers on account trigger 1 and account trigger 2. So in first trigger, we have written on before insert event saying that amount has to be pre-populated with 100. And in the second trigger, let's say we have written a logic. If amount equals to null, throw an error. Okay. So in Salesforce, order of execution of triggers is not guaranteed if multiple triggers are written on same object. In this case, let's say we have written two triggers like this. It can Salesforce can execute the first trigger first and then second trigger later. Or it can execute the second trigger first and then execute the first trigger later. So let's see what would be the result if we follow this order, and we'll see what would happen if second trigger we executed first and first trigger executed later. So in this scenario, in this order, so a amount is pre-populated with 100, so amount value is set to 100 as per first trigger. And as per the order, if we come to this trigger, if amount equals to null, as amount is already 100, amount cannot be equals to null, so hence it will come out of that if condition. Finally, the record will get inserted with amount equal to 100. Hence, there is no error. Okay. However, if Salesforce follows this order, executing trigger 2 first, it will check if amount equals to null. By that time, if no one provides amount value, amount will be empty and it will throw error, and it will not come to the second trigger in the first place. I mean, it will not come to the next trigger in the first place. And then it will show an error directly, and then the result will be error. So see, based on the order of execution, the results changes. That's the reason Salesforce always recommends. Even though Salesforce allows you to write multiple triggers, Salesforce always recommends you to write one trigger per one object so that you can decide your order. I hope you understood what is the problem of using multiple triggers under the same object. Next best practice is bulkify your trigger. Code should work if records are inserted, updated, deleted, or undeleted in bulk. What does that mean exactly? So whenever you write your trigger, do not assume that always your user will provide you the values from user interface. We have your new button, right? Where you will click new button and then provide values and then click on save. It is not necessarily same every time. So that we might be creating a CSV file and then uploading set of records like tens, hundreds, or thousands, or lakhs of records from the data loader or workbench. So your trigger should be able to handle whether user provides data from user interface or they will be providing data from CSV file via data loader. So that kind of data providing from data loader or workbench, because they are providing the data in bulk rates. That's the reason. If you need to write your trigger, definitely write your logic in such a way that it will handle multiple records are loaded at once. Let us see the bulkification with an example. So whatever we have written here is all about the bulkification itself. So we have written the account trigger, right? So it's all bulkified. So if you see, let's say after the insert, let's say we have 10 records inserted, it will go inside, and for all the 10 records, the account loop will run and it will create contact instances, and the contact instances are kept in a list. And finally, out of the for loop, we have inserted the list. So let's say we have 10 accounts created, so equivalent 10 contacts will be created by using this insert operation. Let me show you how the code will be if there is no bulkification. So I'll create a new trigger on contact, and then I will show you contact, trigger, and then on contact, and then click on submit. Now, you already know, right? Whenever you want to write some code, you can just put that in trigger dot is insert and is insert. Sorry, before. Let's say we have the requirement to pre-populate the contact last name with ABC. So we can do that in this way. Okay, so if it is not bulkified code, so this is a list, right? So Trigger.new is a list. So we will take the first record of the trigger. So this is a list and basically an array. So array of the first record, dot last name equals, so whatever user has provided plus ABC. Okay. Now, if we do this, this code will obviously run and then it will obviously work. However, by doing this, let's say if user creates one record from user interface, it will come inside and it will check the last name, and then last name plus ABC will be assigned to last name. So let's say I have given Srikanth in the user interface under last name, then it will insert as Srikanth ABC. This will work obviously, but it will only work if you are inserting it from user interface and if you are inserting only one record. However, if you are inserting 10 records, the first record will work, rest of the 9 records will not have this value updated properly. So if it has to be updated properly, then you need to write your logic in a different way. Non-bulkification of code. Okay. Let's see how the bulkification code bulkified code. I will comment this down. Okay. Now how to write bulkified code here. So it's the same. We need to write if block trigger dot is insert and trigger dot is before. This is something which we have already seen, already has done. So, but I will just show it again. Contact con trigger dot new, and inside con dot last name is equal to con dot last name plus APC. So now let's say if 10 records comes into the trigger. So for each of the contact, we are assigning the last name equal to current last name plus ABC. So if we provide Shrikant, it will be saved as Shrikant ABC. Let's say you have inserted 10 records with 10 different names. For all the 10 names, ABC will be appended at the last. But if we do this in this way, it will not work that way. So this is how you need to bulkify your code. So let me save this and done. Next best practice is avoid DML statements or SQL queries in for loops, else it will hit governor limits. So we have a governor limit of using 150 DML statements in a single transaction or 100 queries in a single transaction. Let's say we inserted 100 records or like maybe 1000 records, and then you will run for loop for trigger.new, right? Let's say it inserts 1000 records, you will run for loop on the trigger.new list. Then what happens is if you do any DML operations or SQL queries in that particular for loop, obviously this loop will run 1000 times. If you have your DML operations, then within the first 150 statements itself, DML will hit the error, and SQL is having just 100 queries. Then within the 100th loop itself, this will hit an error. So that's the reason whenever you need DML operations or SQLs, queries to be written, put that outside the loop. You can use maps, lists, etc., to have that sorted, and then put everything, every DML operation or SQL outside the for loop. Never ever use these statements inside for loop. It's not only for triggers, it is applicable for entire Apex. Next one is do not write logics in trigger. Use trigger handler instead. What? What is this? So we have written all our logic in trigger, right? Then what is this trigger handler? So let me explain that to you now. So this is the trigger that we have written. So we have written almost 7 scenarios where we have written our logics inside these events, right? So event blocks. So we have written another logic in another event block, which is after delete block. So before delete block, we have written another logic. However, Salesforce requires us to put this logic in another class and call that class from this trigger. So let me show you how we'll do that. So cut this logic, whatever we have written for after and delete, and we'll put it in a separate trigger handler. So new and click on class and then account trigger handler. You can define any name, but trigger handler is a standard. Okay. So click on OK. Any class can be called as trigger handler if that class methods are being called by trigger. Simple. So we will create a simple method saying that public static void and send email on undelete, and then put your logic here. Okay. So now this logic has to be run and this has to be called from this trigger. So what is the class? Now this is a static method, right? Whenever it's a static method, you can call it by class name. So class name dot that method name and this one. However, this particular method needs trigger.new, right? It needs trigger.new to run the logic. However, trigger.new is a context variable which is only applicable within Apex Trigger. So we will send trigger.new here, okay? But we will receive it as list of accounts, which is here, list of accounts. And then instead of trigger.new, make it as new or like account list new. To understand that's it, trigger.new that has been sent from trigger. So here just replace trigger.new with account list. Simple. So I just saved this one. So we have moved the undelete logic into another class in a method where we are receiving that trigger.new into this parameter, and then it is looping through all the parameters, and we have the send email logic here. So now we'll go and click on Apex Trigger and we'll just save this one. So if you see, we have moved our after undelete logic completely into Apex Trigger Handler. We can do the same for others also. So let me do that for another one. Copy, cut, go here. And this is also send email if I'm not wrong. So public static void and send email on after delete. And then paste our logic. Ding. We'll go back to trigger and then we can call that method, particular method. So what is that method name which we have written? Send email on after delete. Okay. So we need to send what this method is expecting. We are using trigger.old here now. So that's the reason we need to send trigger.old here. Okay. So to receive this trigger.old, we need to take this parameter. We need to input the parameter here. So list of account and then ACC list old and then copy and paste it here and then done. See? So this is how you need to put all your logics. You just need to cut all your logics and then put it in another method. And finally, this trigger should be only having if block and it should contain the calling of trigger handlers. So this is what is called any class that is being called or any class methods that are being called from triggers are nothing but trigger handler. So we need to use trigger handler to put all our logics here and then call the respective methods from triggers like this. Okay. So if someone asks what is trigger handler, say that trigger handler is a class where it has the methods and logics which will be called from trigger. Then next one is avoid hard coding of IDs in Apex triggers. Hard coding in the sense giving some values which cannot be altered unless and until you update the program. So let me show you one example. So let's take this scenario. Yeah. So in after insert logic, we have written a scenario where for every account created, we want to create a contact to be also be created. So if we want all the contacts to be associated with a specific account ID, you can just give like this, right? So we can just hard code the value saying that so account records will be starting 001. So if we give something like, let's copy the URL from somewhere and then you can just give this account ID like this. Let's say these IDs will be changed across the environments. Let's say you provide some hard-coded ID in dev environment. Later when you move it to QA or you move it to UAT or production, that same record will not be there in UAT or in production. That's the reason this will fail. You're trying to assign the account ID with some hard-coded ID, which will not be there in the further environments. That's the reason never ever hard code your values in Apex triggers. Not only in Apex triggers, never hard code in Apex classes at all. If you want to use some hard coded values in your trigger, you can use custom labels, custom settings, and custom metadata, and then refer into your code so that in production it is easy for you to change. Next one is prevent recursive triggers. So in triggers, there is a chance that our trigger will be called again and again and again in a loop. It's like an infinite times of calling. So we need to prevent that to happen. So this is also an entry questions. We need to know how to prevent triggers to be called recursively. Let's see with an example. So let's say we have a user who is actually creating an account from user interface. Once user clicks on save, Salesforce calls triggers after user clicking on save. So now let's say we have after insert event logic on account trigger. So here in after insert, we are inserting another account. When user is creating this account, we are also trying to create a duplicate account in this account object. So we are creating the second account as per the logic in after insert event. So what happens here is, so user clicks on save, an account will be created and then it will go to after insert and another account will be created. As soon as another account created, basically we are doing a DML operation account, which means it will call trigger again. Why? Because we are actually doing an insert operation here. So this insert operation will again call the trigger, and in the trigger we have after insert logic, and again this logic will run. So this logic, it will be creating another account, which will be third account now, and then it will again do an insert operation, and then it will call the trigger again because a new account has been created. Again, this will loop until the trigger depth is reached. As this is an infinite loop, trigger will throw an exception saying that trigger depth has reached. As per the requirement, whenever user creates an account, definitely we need to create a duplicate account. That is for sure. But we need to stop these repetitions again and again. So for that, we have this solution called using a static Boolean variable in trigger. So we'll see how to do that. As we already have written trigger on account, we'll try to create a similar trigger on contact. Okay. So contact trigger, and object should be contact con. Yeah. So we have created a contact trigger. We will do that in after insert. So whenever a contact is inserted, we'll try to create another contact in after insert logic. Okay. So to do that, we can actually write our logic something like trigger dot is if I is after and trigger dot is insert. Okay. Now we need to write our logic to insert another contact. Okay. However, as we have seen in the previous slide, we need to write our logic in a separate trigger handler. Okay. So we'll create another trigger handler, which is an Apex class, contact, trigger handler. Okay. So in here, we will write our logic. So which is public static void create duplicate contact. And here we should be receiving the list of contacts that are already getting inserted, which it will pass here new cons list. Okay. Now we need to write our logic by running for loop. Okay, this is called bulkifying of coding, which we have seen earlier. No, so contact con new cons. So if one record is inserted or 10 records are inserted, our code should be able to handle it. So in here we need to create another contact. Con 1 equal to new con contact and con1 dot class name duplicate contact. Okay. So now that we have given the name, we will add it to a new list and then try to insert the contact. So contact cons two cons to insert. So these are duplicate contacts. Okay. So if one contact is inserted, there will be another duplicate contact. That's the idea. So dup dot add and con1. And finally, we need to insert this to context. Okay. Now we have our method written. We need to call this method from our trigger. So after the insert, whenever a contact is inserted, after the insert, we are trying to call our method, which is this method, create duplicate contact. However, this needs the list of contact that got inserted, no? So which we are sending Trigger.new. Okay. Now what happens here is, as we have seen in the previous slides, whenever a contact is inserted, it will come here and then it will insert a duplicate contact. As we are inserting another contact, it will again call the after insert trigger, which again it will call this after insert, and it will call this duplicate method, and then another contact will be inserted, and again it is getting inserted, right? That's the reason it will call again our trigger, and it will loop on. It will loop until it gives an exception. So let us test that out first. So we'll go to contacts, click on new, and then I'll just create test 1, 2, 3, and then click on save. It should give me an error saying that see, it is getting called these many times and it is giving an exception saying that depth exceeded. So this is what recursive trigger mean. So trigger is getting called recursively until this is reaching a depth. Okay. So to fix that, we need to create a static Boolean variable. Let's see how to do that. So that's an easy thing. Basically, we need to go to our class where we can create a new static Boolean variable. Static Boolean. Oh, it's like is trigger ran. Okay. So by default, we'll make it as false. Okay. Now in our trigger, we'll check. So what happens is first time when it comes, let's say first time a contact is inserted, it will check whether it is insert or not. If it is after insert, we will check our trigger also, that variable also. So that Boolean variable. So we need to call the Boolean variable by using class name dot that Boolean variable. So if that Boolean variable is false, which means if the trigger hasn't run yet, only then go inside. So what happens? It will go inside, and after it goes inside, it will run the logic, right? So here what we will do is So we will change the trigger and value to true here. So copy this and then make it to true. Okay. Now what happens is, so for the first time, whenever a contact is inserted, it will check this condition. By the time it comes for the first time, this is trigger ran will be false. So as this is false, false of negation will be true, right? So that's the reason it will go inside, and as soon as it comes inside, we are making it to true. Okay. And then we are running out duplicate logic. So what is the duplicate contact logic will do? It will insert the new contact with duplicate contact name. Okay. And then we are doing the insert. As we have done another insertion, it will call our after trigger again. So it again comes here, but this time, as we have done this value to true, here it will say the contact TriggerHandler.is trigger would be true. Negation of true would be false, and then it will stop going into this for if condition again. So this is how, by using this variable, initially it is false. For the first time it is coming inside, we are making it to true. So for this reason, every time it comes again here, because of after insert triggers, it will not go inside just because we already made it to true. So by using this static variable, we have stopped the looping of trigger. Basically, we have stopped the recursive running of a trigger. Let's test this out. So we'll go back again, go here, click new, and then we'll just give test 123, and then clicking on save should create test 123 and a duplicate contact also. So the duplicate contact name we have given it as duplicate contacts. Let's see whether it has created. So I just need to check all contacts, duplicate. Yeah, you see, all we have got created. This is what we have done in our logic. Whenever a contact is created, we are creating a duplicate contact. The next best practice is use comments to make your trigger readable. I think you already know this. Whenever you write trigger or any code, make a habit to write the comments of what exactly you are doing in that particular trigger or in the logic. If we take our trigger as an example, we have written the comments respectively, right? So on this method, so whatever logic that it is doing here, we just added that in the comment section so that whenever a new developer or any other support developer sees this method, they will understand what exactly we are doing in this method. So make a habit of putting comments like this. So let's say if you want to put some particular comment on a specific line, you can just add it here saying that user email address will be added into the list. Something like this. So you can add as many as comments you want to make your trigger or your class more readable. Let us see a few entry questions. So the first question is, what are the events in trigger? So there are total 7 events. Before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, and after undelete. We have seen the respective scenarios for each of the event. But however, to remember this event, most of the time people will get confused whether it is before undelete or after undelete. So the hint would be 4A, 3B. 4 in the sense 4 afters, 3 befores. So you need to understand for insert, update, and delete that you will be having all before and after. But for undelete only, we'll be having only one, which is after undelete. So 4 is 4 afters. After insert, after update, after delete, after undelete. And 3 Bs, 3 befores. Before insert, before update, before delete. Now comes the second entry question. What are the types of trigger? So there are two types of trigger, before the trigger and after trigger. In before we have seen in the previous entry question, before insert, before update, before delete. And for after, you will be having 4 events, which is after insert, after update, after delete, after delete. And we have already seen the thumb rule, whether how to decide before and after event. Whenever a requirement is given, if the requirement is either to pre-populate any field on the same record or to fire a error validating the record, then go with before events, whether it is before insert or before update. In any other condition, except these two scenarios, if it is coming into any other scenario, then you need to jump to after insert or after update events. Please do remember this thumb rule so that most of your scenarios can be answered easily. Entry question number 3. What are the context variables in trigger? So while we are writing the code, we have seen these context variables. So there are total 12 context variables, which are trigger.b is before, trigger.is after, trigger.is insert, trigger.is update, trigger.is delete, trigger.is undelete, trigger.new map, trigger.new map, trigger.old, trigger.old map, And these are the two that we haven't discussed in our scenarios. But trigger.size is something, let's say how many records that you have inserted from data loader or workbench. If you are inserting a record from user interface, this trigger.size will be always 1, because from user interface you can only insert one record. If you are inserting from data loader, let's say you're inserting 10 records, the trigger.size will be 10 records. Trigger dot is executing. So whenever you are doing some kind of logics, let's say you are doing it in some kind of Apex class kind of thing, you need to understand whether that logic is being ran by trigger or it is a standalone method. Then by using this trigger dot executing, you will understand whether that method is called by trigger or a standalone method. So for that, you would be using trigger.new is a list which will be having latest value that user has provided. Trigger.new map is basically will be having ID key, ID value pair, and all will be having the previous values before the user has provided the values. Same with old map, which will be having the same kind of list, but in a map structure, which will be key ID value pair. Into your question number 4. What is recursive trigger? Recursive triggers are the triggers that are running on loop, either are running recursively. So basically a trigger is getting called again and again because of your continuous inserts, or like the way you are inserting it, or where way you are updating it. We have already seen such example earlier. So how to prevent that recursive trigger? So you might ask how you would prevent it. Then you need to say that use static boolean variable to stop the trigger recursion. Into your question number 5. Will trigger.new context variable available in before insert event? The answer is yes. So what is trigger.new? Trigger.new is nothing but the list of records that user inserted from user interface. So basically you need to understand trigger.new as the values that user will provide into database. Any value that is new to database or user provides it, or like it's new to database, some new values you're providing it, then those values are stored in trigger.new. If you're not giving any new values to the system, those values will be stored in trigger.old. Okay, so trigger.new. Before insert, anyhow, you will be providing some values. That is the reason trigger.new will be holding the list of values or list of records that you provide. And then the answer is yes, of course. Now the next question. Will trigger.new map context variable available in before insert event? The answer is no. Why? Because trigger.new map is a map with key value pair. However, the key is ID of that record. But as this is a before insert event, the record isn't inserted yet. So just because it is not inserted, ID value will not be generated. Correct? That's the reason in before insert, because there is no ID, Salesforce will not have this trigger.new map to be populated. So even though we have trigger.new in before insert, trigger.new map is not available because the key would be the ID of record, but ID is not available in before insert. That's the reason trigger.new map is not available. So this kind of tricky questions might come to you. Just don't get confused. You need to understand whether ID value is there or not, because trigger.new map or old map will have ID as its key, value as its the complete record. Let's create a thumb rule here. So if any event is doing any new changes to the database, let's say you are providing new values to the database, then trigger.new will be available in that event with the new changes in this trigger.new. Okay. So example, insert event provides new values to the database, right? So whenever you're doing an insert, you are providing new values to the database. If you provide new values to the database, then trigger.new will be available. So in insert event, both in before and after insert, you will be seeing trigger.new. Okay. Now in update event, even update event also provides some new values, right? Whenever you're updating, you're basically providing some new values overriding the old values, which means you're also providing new values into the database. Hence, trigger.new also will be available in both before update and after update. Now we'll see the delete event. Delete event doesn't really provide new values to the database. Why? Because you're just deleting that record. Already existing data, you're just taking it out from the database. So basically, you're not providing new data into the database. Hence, trigger.new will not be available in delete event. By using that thumb rule, we'll try to populate this table. So we have four of these context variables. We'll see whether these context variables are available in all of our 7 events. Okay, first we'll see before insert and trigger new. Trigger new is available in before insert or not. As we have mentioned before, whenever you are providing new values to the database in that event, so then obviously trigger.new will be available in that event. So in before insert, basically you're doing an insert operation. Whenever you're doing an insert operation, you're providing new values. Hence, trigger.new is available in before insert. Now we'll talk about trigger.new map. So Trigger.new map also will be having the new values. However, Trigger.new map is basically having key ID value of Salesforce, key as ID value of Salesforce. So Salesforce IDs will not be generated before the insert of the operation. As this is before insert, Salesforce ID is not generated, hence new map will not have the key value as Salesforce ID. Hence, new map will not be generated in before insert. Hence, this is not available. Now trigger dot old or old map. So if there is any existing value of that particular record, only then trigger dot old or old map is available. So in before insert will not have any of the existing values. Hence old and old map is not at all available in before insert. I hope this is clear for you. Now we'll talk about after insert. Even after insert is also something like you are inserting the record. After the insert, anyhow, you would be having the new values. Hence, basically, you are providing new values to the Salesforce. So, into the database. So, you will be having trigger.new value is available in after insert. Now, we'll talk about trigger.new map. The difference between before insert and after insert here is it is after the insert, which means once you're inserting a record into the system, Salesforce ID is generated. As Salesforce ID is generated, trigger.new map will also be generated. Why? Because Salesforce IDs are being added as key value, key in new map, value as Salesforce record. Hence, trigger.new map is available in after insert. Same like before insert, trigger.old or old map will not be available because there is no existing values in the insert operation. So after insert, trigger.old is not available. So trigger.old and trigger.old map is not available in after insert operation. Now we'll talk about before update operation. So as I have mentioned in the thumb rule, if you are providing new values, then trigger.new will be available, correct? So when you are doing an update, basically you're overriding the previous value and providing the new value, right? So let's say I change the name from Srikanth to Salesforce, then new value is Salesforce. So trigger.new would hold Salesforce value, trigger.old would hold Srikanth value. Hence trigger.new is available as Salesforce IDs are already there. So trigger.new map also will be available for that record. And old is available because the previous values will be stored in old list. Old map is basically a map of the old values. So old map will also be available in before update. So this is very much same with after update because after update also you will be having new values and old values too. Hence trigger.new, new map, old and old map is available in after update operation. All these four context variables are available in both before update and after update. Now we'll talk about before delete. So before delete, so as I have mentioned in the thumb rule, if you are providing new values to the database, only then trigger.new is available. However, before delete, basically you're doing a delete operation. When you're doing a delete operation, you're not actually giving some values or new values to the database. Hence, trigger.new will not be available. So before delete and before delete trigger.new is not available. So in the same way, trigger.new map is also not available. Why? Because it's basically if there is no new values, there's no point of having either new or new map. Now we'll talk about old. So as you're deleting the existing data, so the existing data will be stored in old and old map. Hence you will be having trigger.old and you also will be having trigger.old map. Now we'll talk about after delete. So in after delete, it's very much same like before delete only. So in before delete, you're not having the new values, right? In the same way, after all delete also will not have new values. You're actually deleting the existing data. Hence, before delete and after delete will share same kind of visibility on this context variable. So there is no new or new map in before or after delete. We'll have trigger.old and old map in before delete and after delete. Now we'll talk about after undelete. After undelete is something new, a kind of event here. So basically you are undeleting or like you are taking some data from recycle bin. So as you are taking that new data from recycle bin and then putting into database, that would be added as a new data into Salesforce. Hence, as that is considered as a new record, trigger.new and trigger.new map will be available in after undelete event. However, you are not actually having any existing data into that, so hence trigger.old or old map is not available in after undelete. So this is the complete chart. So people who wanted, you can take the screenshot of it so that it can be used for your future reference. I hope this chart would be useful for some of you. And let's move on to the next section. Let's close this session with final quiz. Okay, so we'll see the questions. If a opportunity gets inserted and don't fill the closed state, then pre-populate it with the current date plus 90 days. Which trigger event you would use? So as you have seen, this is an insert operation that user is doing, right? So whenever opportunity is inserted, if they don't provide the closed date, then pre-populate it with the current date plus 90 days. So as you know the thumb rule to decide whether it is before insert or after insert, you need to decide whether you're doing a pre-population or validation of the record. If you are doing either pre-population or the validation of that record, then you should be using before insert, not after insert, as this is insert operation. So we need to either choose before insert and after insert. By thumb rule, we have decided it is before insert. So the answer would be before insert. Next question. When an opportunity status changed to closed, send an congrats email to opportunity owner. Which trigger you would use? So when an opportunity status changed to close, as they have mentioned, changed in the sense it has been a previous value before and now they are changing it to close, which means they are updating the record to change the status to closed. So as this is an update operation, so it has to be either before update or after update. So by using this thumb rule, we need to decide what operation it has to be or what event it has to be. Send an congrats email. So this is not a pre-populating of record or it's not a validating of record. So as it is out of those two scenarios, we need to choose after update. So here the answer would be Apex trigger after update. Next question. If user deletes an account, delete all its child records, which event you would use? So whenever account is getting deleted, deleting of all its child records. So basically as user is deleting the account, it's a delete operation. It should be either before delete or after delete, right? So delete all its child records. So whenever if you want to do any action other than providing an error or like validating of record, you would use before events. So here you are actually deleting child record. So hence you can choose after delete. So the answer would be Apex trigger after delete. Next question. In account record, annual revenue value should never be empty. How do you do it? Which events you would use? As it has said, which events? Okay, so which means it can be a multiple answer too. So annual revenue is a field on account record, so it should never be empty. Basically, you should be validating the record, saying that if our annual revenue value is not entered, then you should be providing an error. So when you would be giving the value, it's like whenever you're inserting a record or updating a record. So if you are doing a validations, then obviously it has to be before events. Hence the answer would be when before the insert you need to write a logic to validate the record, and before the update you need to write a logic to validate that record. So the answer would be before insert and before update. Most of the time, as I have mentioned earlier, whenever a scenario comes, it might be a single event you need to select, or you might need to select a combination of events. Next question is, in account record, when annual revenue is greater than 1 million, I guess, this should send an email to account owner, which event you should be using. So whenever annual event is greater than 1 million. So when this annual revenue can be given, whenever account record is created, they can provide annual value. Whenever they are updating the record, they can provide the annual revenue value. So it has to be both insert and update operation. However, we need to decide whether it has to be before or after. So you're neither validating the record nor you're pre-populating an existing field in that same record. Hence, it has to be after event based on our thumb rule. So it has to be after insert and after update events. Next question is, which of them are context variables in using trigger? So try this one. So tell me what are the context variables in using trigger. So the answer is after and delete, before update, and after update. There is no before and delete operation at all. It would be 4A, 3B. 4 after, 3 before. So there is no before and delete. Next question is, how many triggers can we write on a single object? 1, 2, 10, many. The answer is many. You can write multiple triggers on single object, but recommended is one. Salesforce allows you to write multiple triggers on a single object, but the recommended number of triggers on a single object is one. Can we call external system from trigger? Answer yes or no. The answer is yes. If you want to do an integration with external system or if you want to do a call out from this system, you can actually do it from trigger. Triggers are synchronous, callout has to be done asynchronously. Whenever if you want your code or callout has to happen asynchronously, put your callout code in a future method and call that future method from your trigger. So this is how you would do. Can we call a batch class or Kubel class from trigger? Of course, yes. It's same like the previous scenario. Triggers are synchronous, batch classes and Kubel classes will run asynchronously. So that should be fine. Trigger will do that job and batch classes and Kubel classes will do its job in a separate thread. So from trigger, you can call feature methods, batch classes and Kubel classes also. So Trigger.new is available in which events? So before insert, after insert, before delete, after delete. So based on our previous chart, I think you people can answer it. The answer is before insert and after insert. Because before delete and after delete, we are not having the new data provided into the database. As per the thumb rule, if you are providing only the new data to the database, then Trigger.new will be available. Hence, it's only before insert and after delete, after insert. Trigger.old is available in which events? I think you can guess it, right? It's the opposite way. So it's before delete and after delete. Because before insert and after insert, there is no existing values. If you provide new values, that will be stored in Trigger.new. If there is any existing values, then it will be stored in Trigger.old or old map respectively. And that's the wrap up. If you have any questions, comment down below. Practice, 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 and bye.